This is the Navigating Adult ADHD podcast, here to help you navigate and thrive with ADHD in adulthood. I'm your host, Zena, and I was diagnosed at age 36. As with many ADHDers, I have a rebellious and non-conformist style, and that means that there will likely be swearing in the coming episode. Please be mindful of any little people. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Navigating Adult ADHD podcast. So happy to be here with you all today when we are going to be talking about sleep. And I have got a lot to say on this topic. So sit down, buckle up, or if you're walking or running, do your thing. So you may be one of the many ADHDers like myself who is experiencing challenges with sleep. So as I said, I'm in that category as we speak, and it is actually very common for those of us with ADHD to have challenges with sleep. It is often one of the things that they ask about when you visit the psychiatrist and get diagnosed. They will ask you about your history of sleep. And as we know, our ADHD brain does not shut off when we hit the pillow. The internal hyperactivity often continues well into the night. Now, there is also research that suggests we have a delayed circadian clock, meaning that some of us are programmed to sleep much later than neurotypical people, which in our 9-to-5 society that we live in doesn't always work so well when we have obligations that we need to meet. So in today's episode, as I said, we have got so much to cover. I'm giving you guys so many things that you can do to support your sleep. We're going to cover the common sleep challenges, what sleep actually does for us, and as I said, a bunch of proven tools and strategies for getting better sleep. Now, I have done a shit ton of research for this episode, and towards the end, I'm going to mention a couple of the medical professionals in the sleep and ADHD space, whom I do reference throughout, that if you would like to do even more research on, you can go and check out, okay? Now, I know you guys are going to get so much value out of today's episode, and I would greatly appreciate if you could leave us a 5-star review on this podcast. Leave a comment, tell us why you're enjoying it, what you love about it, and if there's any feedback that you want to give that something you don't love, feel free to hit me up. You can visit my website, zenajones.com, and click on the contact me. Send me an email and let me know, because obviously I would love to get your feedback and make this podcast as amazing as possible. And on that note, if you know anyone else navigating ADHD as an adult, please share this podcast with them. And we want to try and help and reach as many people as possible. I said that around the wrong way, but you're with me. All right, so let's start today by thinking about someone, let's say at work. Someone at work who, when they are really tired, how they behave. When somebody you work with turns up and they are exhausted, they've had a terrible night's sleep, they're generally less productive, probably more irritable, less focused, perhaps even uninterested, and may struggle to get their ordinary tasks done. With a lack of sleep, people often display ADHD-like symptoms. Isn't that interesting? So when we as ADHDers aren't getting enough sleep, it can make our symptoms much worse. Now, if you could be experiencing sleep apnea, severe hormonal imbalances, or depression that impacts your sleep, I definitely recommend that you see a medical professional and speak with your doctor, okay? Now, Dr. Thomas Brown of the Brown ADHD Clinic said, "The simplest explanation is that sleep disturbances are direct manifestations of ADHD itself. True hyperactivity is extremely rare in women of any age. Most women experience the mental and physical restlessness of ADHD, only when they are trying to shut down the arousal state of the day-to-day functioning in order to fall asleep. I don't know about you, but that's very true for me too. At least 75% of adults of both genders report that their mind's restlessness move from one concern to another for several hours until they finally fall asleep. Even then, they toss and turn and awaken frequently and sometimes barely sleep at all. Another thing that Dr. Brown says is many people with ADHD are at their best at night. I have so many clients in this category. They are at their most energetic, thinking they're clearest and most stable after the sun goes down, when the house is quiet and the distractions are low. This is their most productive time. Now, unfortunately, as I said before, they have jobs and families to which they must attend the next morning, so tasks can be made much harder with that inadequate sleep. So, my friend, can you relate to that? I know I sure can. When I have something that's weighing really heavy on my mind, it can often result in a very restless sleep. And I often take a break during the daytime and then use the evening to get a couple more hours of work done when my schedule and family commitments allow. But I do that because I can actually be incredibly productive during that evening time, and I really thoroughly enjoy it. And I'm fortunate that I can do it in a way where it doesn't actually impact my sleep so much. Now, I have learned the hard way not to get too in the zone, because if I do that, I can then be stimulated for hours, and of course, it has that knock-on effect with sleep. Now, we all know that sleep is important. It's actually one of the most amazing tools that we have as human beings for our mental, emotional, and physical health. It actually boosts our immune system. Sleep helps to aid in weight management. Sleep relieves stress, and it helps to stabilize our emotions. Now, I do have a word of warning for you all. Please do not use any of this information that I'm going to share with you against yourself. That goes with anything I share in a podcast episode, okay? Most humans need approximately 7 to 9 hours of sleep. So this is why we're constantly hearing about 8 hours all the time. That's kind of drummed into us, okay? It's the average. Now, of course, there will be occasions where you may only get 6 hours one night, but then you might get 9 the next, and it's measured roughly over time. There is nothing wrong with you if you need more than 7 to 9 hours. I also want to acknowledge that many of the women I work with get roughly about 6 hours of sleep, and even then sometimes that is a struggle, and they are still able to function well. So if you struggle to get anywhere close to 7 hours, don't panic. This episode is going to help you. As a society, we have very much been taught to be productive, and that has kind of led us to being sleep deprived in many ways, as we often trade sleep for getting more shit done. Okay? But unfortunately, we can't sacrifice sleep for productivity. Eventually, that catches up with us and it negatively impacts us. For some people, it leads to burnout. For those of us with ADHD, it can lead to dopamine debt. We have an entire episode on that. So, some of the common factors that can affect our sleep, this goes for all humans, are temperature, the food that we eat and when we eat it, our hormones, alcohol, caffeine. Caffeine is something I love. Exercise, but not only the type of exercise, but when we do it as well. And something else that affects our sleep is medication. When we take it, and especially if we are on stimulant medications. I know for me, if I take my ADHD medication too late in the day, it will negatively impact my sleep and keep me awake. So I have to take it early on in the day. Now, I want you to consider these questions. How much sleep does your body need? Do you wake up feeling well rested? What are your thoughts about sleep? And how is your relationship with sleep? Is it something that you worry about, that you get really anxious about? Is it something you struggle with? Is it kind of annoying? It kind of gets in the way of you having your you time, your downtime. Do you struggle to put your phone down or resist another episode of Netflix when it comes time to get into bed? I remember when I was at the psychiatrist and, in the process of being diagnosed with ADHD, and she asked me about my history of sleep. And I'd kind of always thought I'd been a good sleeper. But the more she started to question me, I began to remember that as a teenager, and it was around the time I was going through puberty, that I first started to experience anxiety. And I can vividly remember lying awake, getting so anxious as I looked at the clock and saw the time, getting later and later and later. And I was calculating in my brain how much sleep I was going to get and thinking, that's not enough. And it would just make me more and more anxious, and I would be less and less likely to fall asleep. It was a really stressful situation. I see also a very common theme in many of the women with ADHD that I work with who tell me that in the evening when they, might be thinking about getting into bed, they're resistant to do that or hesitant because it's their time. I finally get to do what I want. I enjoy winding down and just getting to finally watch some Netflix and chill out and relax. And there's this real resistance around getting into bed and going to sleep. So there are 3 most common sleep challenges associated with ADHD. The first one is difficulty falling asleep. So you might have trouble shutting off your brain. Maybe you don't feel tired or you get that kind of late night burst of energy. Maybe you even consider yourself as a night owl. So you hop into bed, you stare at the ceiling, you toss and turn, you get frustrated. Now, often, not always, but often that is linked to stress or anxiety, right? Having that busy brain constantly going. The second one is difficulty waking up. So if you often feel like you were finally in a deep sleep only to be woken by your alarm, you really struggle to get up, you hit the snooze button. You may struggle with feeling like you never seem to get enough sleep and you just aren't well rested. And the third challenge is having a really restless sleep. So you wake up a lot during the night, you toss and turn, maybe your partner even leaves the bed sometimes or complains about how much you move around. Yes, that has been me recently. And perhaps you even kick the duvet and the blankets off and they end up on the floor or they become this huge mess that you're dealing with in the morning. I'm actually one of those people who gets I roll on it funny and then it's stuck under me and I go to roll over and I can't and I have to tell you this hilarious story. Just last night, I stuck my leg out of the bed because I got too hot and I was restless and I was moving around and then there was the cat and I accidentally kicked the cat off the bed. Yes, I did. All right. So having ADHD means that we have less serotonin in our systems, less serotonin than neurotypical people, okay? And serotonin supports mood, okay, as well as helping to regulate when you sleep and when you wake up. Now, many ADHD experts, as well as the neuroscientists, recommend taking an omega-3 supplement and a magnesium supplement. Now, these supplements don't only improve sleep, but they also improve many of our ADHD symptoms. These are 2 that I take and 2 that I recommend. So in terms of omega-3, it helps improve sleep by increasing natural levels of melatonin in the body. And magnesium helps sleep by boosting the production of a neurotransmitter called GABA, which is known for its calming effects on the body. Now, when it comes to purchasing an omega-3 supplement, you want to look for one that has an EPA level of 1,000 milligrams or more. If you live in New Zealand like me, the only brand that I have found thus far, and let me know if you find another one, that has this is the Nordic Naturals brand, and it is called EPA Extra. And it has 1,060 milligrams of EPAs. Okay? When it comes to magnesium, if you have ever bought a magnesium supplement, did you know there are so friggin' many? Confused my brain. But don't worry, because I've narrowed it down for you all. There are 2 that are recommended for those of us with ADHD and specifically to support sleep. So the first one is threonate. That is one, so magnesium threonate. And the other option, and that's the one that I take, and the other option is magnesium bisglycinate. Okay, so those are the 2 options that I recommend specifically. Now, there are 4 key areas that we want to consider when we talk about managing and improving our sleep. And those 4 areas are our circadian rhythm, emotional management, cortisol levels, which is basically stress, and our relationship to sleep, as in our thoughts about sleep. Okay, so I'm going to break each of these down, and as I go through, I'm going to give you guys some of the tips, tools, and strategies that I use and that I recommend with my clients. So, in terms of circadian rhythm, okay, this is basically our brain's internal clock that knows when it's time to get up in the morning and when it's time to go to sleep in the evening. Okay, this works by responding to light changes in our environment. Okay, so the daylight, when the sun rises, when the sun sets. Okay, our circadian rhythm is linked to that. Now, sometimes our bodies get into a very out of whack circadian rhythm. You may have experienced this if you have traveled. I remember the very first time I flew from New Zealand to the UK, which is on the other side of the world, completely opposite time zone, right? When I'm awake right now recording this, they're fast asleep. It's the middle of their night. So when I traveled from here to there, my body wanted to sleep as soon as the plane landed. And I landed at 8 a.m. in the morning. Even though I had slept the whole way there, they had turned off the lights on the plane and we'd slept pretty much the whole way there, my circadian rhythm was set for sleeping time, not for being awake time. Okay? Now, much like when you travel and experience jet lag, you are able to reset your sleep cycles, okay, and reset your circadian rhythm. So here are some of the ways that we can support our bodies to do this. The first one is getting sunlight within 30 to 60 minutes of waking, where possible, and preferably before 9 a.m. So ideally, if it's a nice bright day, we want to get 10 minutes. If it's a cloudy day, we want to get 20 minutes. And if it's overcast, we want to get 30. Without sunglasses, again, where possible, you're not looking directly at the sun, but just being out in the light. Funny story. My partner this morning, he went outside and he was standing outside, and his brother has stayed over last night, and he said, "What are you doing?" He's standing outside in his boxer shorts early morning, and my partner says, "I'm getting lumens in my eyes." And he's like, "What are you on about?" And he said, "Well, there's research that shows," because he's been listening to me, "there's research that shows that I should go outside within the first 30 to 60 minutes of waking, and it helps my circadian rhythm and improves my sleep." It was kind of cute, I have to tell you guys. So again, getting that sunlight early. Now, I always go out for a walk within it's within 60 minutes of waking, usually in kind of 30 to 45. I go out for a walk. This is just my daily habit. It's the first thing I do. I get up. Sometimes I have a cup of tea, get dressed, and I go for my walk. And I'm getting the sunlight in to support my circadian rhythm, and I'm also getting, the exercise, the dopamine, all the different good things happening. Okay? So again, the goal here is to wake up our circadian clock. Another thing we can do to support this is to wake up at the same or a very similar time each day and go to sleep when you first start to feel sleepy. Many of us push through that sleepy feeling. Now, when we do that, we end up going to bed later, and that causes us to wake up. Okay? So it's messing with our circadian clocks when we avoid going to sleep when we feel sleepy. Okay? So if you can wake up at a similar time each day and then go to sleep when you first start to feel sleepy, you will be supporting your circadian rhythm. Okay? Another really important one here is avoiding bright lights between the hours of roughly 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. Okay? And obviously, like, you want to move around safely if you need to get up and go to the bathroom or anything like that. If you can leave like the underfloor kind of lighting on, the bathroom underneath the vanity and that kind of thing, sometimes those sorts of lights. Anything that you can do to avoid having to turn on a very bright artificial light is great. But those artificial lights and those bright lights between those hours can cause problems for our circadian rhythm. Okay, it's teaching us to like, oh, it's daylight, wake up, and that's wrong. It's like, it's not daylight. It's still late at night. Now, if you're struggling to get back to sleep and you're a person who knows that you can read and go back to sleep, use candles. If you can safely use candles, like burning fires, like if you have a fireplace in your home, that kind of a thing, that is supportive of this. It's artificial lights between those hours that can really mess with our system. Now, in doing this and avoiding those bright lights between roughly 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., it also supports dopamine production too. Okay, so there's an added bonus for us ADHDers right here. Next up on my list, emotional management. Okay, so this is a big part of managing our sleep. You will no doubt have experienced, when you've got something on your mind and you're stressed and worried about something and you're really unable to switch off, and every time you wake up you're thinking about it, it leads to a crappy night's sleep. You've got it, right? You know what I'm talking about. We need to take our anxiety and our stress levels and lower them to help you sleep better. So I recommend 2 different tools for doing this. Number 1 is a brain dump. If you've got a lot on your mind and you're hopping into bed, you just want to grab a journal and a pen and get all that shit out of your head and onto paper. There is no wrong way to do this. You can answer a question like, what am I worried about? What's weighing on my mind? What do I need to remember to do tomorrow? Any question that just helps you to get that shit out of your head and onto paper. What am I struggling with? What hasn't gone well today? What do I need to do tomorrow? Any of those kinds of questions, get it as much out as you possibly can and dump it, okay? That'll help you to alleviate some of the noise and the emotional challenges that are happening as a result of all of the thoughts going on in your head, okay? Number 2 is EFT tapping, emotional freedom technique. And you can use the Tapping Solution app. They have a free version of this. There's also some YouTube guided things that you can go through for free. I have the Tapping Solution app, and anytime I have like a real strong emotion, so yesterday I was experiencing shame, and with that shame, I got that app out and I went through and did the tapping process. So you're effectively tapping on various meridian points around the body. There's a bunch of science and research behind it. I'm not going to go too deep into it because this episode's already so long. But what it's helping us do is take our nervous system and calm it down and process the emotion in the process. I have found it to be incredibly powerful and very, very helpful. It always takes the intensity of my emotion and brings it down, okay, and helps just to ground me in kind of being enough and acceptance and being okay and all of these things. It is very powerful. So again, for emotional management, number 1 is doing that brain dump, and number 2 is EFT tapping. Now, this also ties into the next one here, which is cortisol. Okay, so cortisol is our body's primary stress hormone. Okay, so anything that affects our nervous systems and creates stress in the body has the potential to mess with our sleep. So some stress is normal. Okay, we all experience some stress to a degree, and low levels of stress in the body are healthy. But what we want to avoid where possible is large spikes in cortisol, aka stress. Now, omega-3 supplements, as I mentioned before, they are shown to support lowering cortisol levels and support stress. However, those alone will not quite be enough. So, although I highly recommend that you do that, and of course the brain dumping and the EFT tapping will also be supportive of this, where possible, I also recommend working with a coach or a therapist to learn mindset management and tools and strategies to support your mental and emotional well-being and help lower those levels. Again, just a reminder, I am an ADHD coach. This is the work I do with my clients. If you want to check that out, you can visit zenajones.com and book in for a free call. Another thing here to be mindful of is your caffeine intake, as it can spike our cortisol levels, especially having caffeine close to bedtime as well. Now, I am a caffeine lover, as I mentioned before. However, I am beginning to wonder, and I'm starting to track this in one of the apps I'm going to mention shortly, whether or not my caffeine tolerance may have changed slightly, and this could be in relation to hormones, I'm not sure. But I do wonder if having caffeine later in the day is now negatively impacting my sleep, whereas previously it didn't used to. So that's something I'm currently playing with. So again, just be mindful of your caffeine intake and how that can also spike your cortisol levels. Next up is our relationship to sleep. So your thoughts about sleep are going to have a direct impact on how well you sleep, on when you decide to go to bed, and what priority you give sleep in your life. In order to improve your sleep, you need to improve your relationship to sleep as well. Okay? So what are your current thoughts about sleep? One way we can do this is by answering the question. Sleep is ... Sleep is what? Sleep is hard. Sleep is a waste of time. Sleep is something I struggle with. What are your thoughts about going to bed each night? Maybe you think, I just don't want to. I don't feel like it. I don't have enough time. I want some me time. I need to unwind first. I just hate lying there. Many of those kinds of thoughts are going to create a negative experience of sleep. And therefore, they're creating more resistance around sleeping and potentially more stress and more anxiety around sleep. So here are some other things for you to consider. How would you like to think and feel about sleep? I invite you to write these down and answer them. What are the ways you make going to sleep easy for yourself? And again, what are the ways that you make going to sleep harder for yourself? How would you like to approach sleep differently? And how could you make going to bed and sleeping more enjoyable? If you, like me at the moment, are waking up during the night and you can't fall back to sleep, I got 2 recommendations. Try using the NSDR protocol or do a yoga nidra. It's like a meditation, but you don't actually have to do any of the yoga poses, which is a bonus. You just lie there and likely fall into sleep. So NSDR stands for non-sleep deep rest. Okay. And that is a tool that allows you to control the state of your nervous system, let's say, and the overall state of your mind using specific types of breathing to slow your heart rate down and control your focus. So kind of bringing you out of stress and into relaxation. Okay. There is one from Huberman, whom I love. I use a lot of his work in my research. So he has one that I have been playing with. And also the other one here is yoga nidra, okay, which basically means yoga sleep. It involves doing a body scan and then certain types of breathing to help you relax your brain and body. And that practice can help you kind of get better at switching your brain off and relax into sleep. There are so many free guided, meditations that can take you through this yoga nidra process, as well as the NSDR as well. Just literally go to Google or YouTube and type them in. I highly recommend giving them a go. All right, more recommendations. I got a few more for you guys. So one thing that I am using at the moment is getting a really good book. And I've got to tell you, because I'm obsessed with all things ADHD and that's all I've been reading, I had to get myself a book that is non-ADHD. It's actually about storytelling. It's really good. But get yourself a really good book and plug your phone across the room. That is working really well for me. And the reason I say I had to go away from ADHD is because it would stimulate me into thinking too much throughout the night, and it would actually, spark too many ideas, and then I would, I'd be wanting to write them down, and it didn't work. So now I've got a totally different book, a really good book, but also plug your phone in across the room. If, like me, you're a person who tends to grab it frequently, it's been very helpful. Also, make going to bed more pleasurable, and make staying up less pleasurable. We don't want going to sleep to be a should. We want to make it something that you want to do, something enjoyable. Okay? Also, keep the area where you sleep cool and dark. So have layers on the bed that you can remove if you get too hot, okay? Or if you get too cold, again, have those layers there. Now, our bodies need to drop in temperature by roughly 1 to 3 degrees to fall asleep and stay asleep effectively. Okay, so body temperature increases are one of the reasons why we wake up. So again, having those layers is really important. Again, many of us will know this one. Drinking alcohol can mess with our sleep, as do many sleep medications as well. Okay? So just be mindful of those, and it may be that you want to experiment trying some of these things alongside that, or, kind of trial one or the other kind of thing. I also swear by using ear plugs and an eye mask. I started using earplugs years ago when I traveled. I've done a lot of travel, and it just helped me to block out all of the weird or unusual noises, and then having that eye mask, game changer. I don't go anywhere without those. Okay. Also, white noise or brown noise can be very soothing and can really help you to fall into sleep. There are many free playlists on Spotify that offer this, and I know a lot of people who swear by that, by getting it, using it to help them fall into a sleep. Also, consider that our sleep needs do change over time. And, you may have once been a morning person. Now maybe you're more of an evening person or a night owl. And, even the amount of sleep that you need to really thrive may have also changed over time as well. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is melatonin. I had a few controversial conversations with people about this one. And I want to address this one because it does come with a word of caution. So melatonin is a naturally occurring hormone in our bodies that plays a role in our circadian clocks. Now, people often take melatonin when they struggle to sleep instead of a sleeping pill because, for one, it can be over the counter in some countries, and for two, it is a more natural option, okay? Now, if you live here in New Zealand, like I do, it is not available over the counter. It does require a prescription, as I have also heard it does in the UK. I think it used to be available and now they've banned it. It's prescription only. Now, that is because, of course, it does come with a caution. In some cases, it can mess with our body's own natural ability to produce melatonin, as well as it can inhibit dopamine production. Okay, so as people with ADHD, we already are working with less dopamine. So anything that's going to, potentially have a negative impact on our dopamine, I am cautious of. So hence the word of caution. However, there is plenty of research in both camps. There is research, that suggests it does help people to, sleep better. And I know people who take it nightly and swear by it. I myself use it when I travel, and I use it to adjust to time zones. But for me personally, and I have experimented with this, I think when I take it that it does mess with my body, and it definitely does decrease my dopamine. So those are things I pay very close attention to. And if this is something that you choose, something that you already use, or something you want to play with, I recommend tracking your sleep and tracking, how the melatonin maybe impacts you as well. You can use, obviously, what are they? The smart watches and the various like bands and Fitbits and things like that to track your sleep. But also there's a really excellent app I recommend called Simple, SYMPLE. So that allows you to track specific categories of symptoms, as well as different, different things that, I can't even think of the word, but there's two different kind of things. You can do symptoms and factors. I think that's what it is, factors. Woohoo, I remembered it. I always celebrate myself so much when I remember something, because my ADHD tendency is not to. So big win right there. So again, that app is Simple, SYMPLE. I use that to track my ADHD symptoms alongside my cycle, as well as, any other medication, anything else that's going on. It tracks a whole bunch of stuff, and I think it's friggin' awesome. I'm not an affiliate. I just think it's awesome. So again, experiment with these things that I have shared here today. Keep track of what works for you, what helps you to improve your sleep, and play with these things, and what doesn't work for you, right? Create the best sleep routine for yourself. I have given you guys so much in this episode. Now, if you want to learn even more about sleep, I recommend that you check out Andrew Huberman's podcast or YouTube, and he has an episode called Master Your Sleep and Be More Alert When You're Awake. It is excellent. I also would suggest that you jump on YouTube and look at some of the videos from Dr. Russell Barkley. So he is an ADHD expert, and he has some really good videos on sleep. Both of those experts have recommended the supplements that I shared here with you today, which I myself also take. All right, that's it, my friends. We got through it in under 40 minutes. I am so stoked. Happy sleeping. Let me know how you get on. All right, you'll find me over at zenajones.com. Huge love, my friend. Have a magical week. I'll speak to you soon. Hey, friend. I know exactly what it's like to feel frustrated and confused with your ADHD, and to wish that you could better understand what the hell is going on in your brain. And that's exactly why I created my coaching program, Thriving with ADHD. Inside Thriving with ADHD, you learn a step-by-step process to set and finally achieve your goals, to understand yourself and your ADHD. It's where you learn to feel better and manage your emotions, and create systems and processes that work for you with your ADHD brain. This is designed for you to learn how to thrive with ADHD so you can create the life that you were meant to live. Visit zenajones.com/ADHD to learn more and book a consultation.